Welcome to All Right in Sin City, a podcast about writers and writing in the Windsor-Detroit region. Your podcasters today are
Irene Moore Davis, author, educator, and local historian.
Kim Conklin, Windsor-based writer and filmmaker.
And me, Sarah Jarvis, former bookseller, publishing rep, and literary festival chair. We are on the road with this episode, outside at a reading sponsored by the Woodbridge Farm Writers Retreat in Kingsville, Ontario, run by writer and critic Grant Munro. These readings were recorded on July 21st, 2019 at the Red Lantern Coffee Shop in Kingsville. We catch award-winning novelist Alix Hawley from British Columbia and Windsor's own Poet Laureate Ann Mulhern reading live in the open air in Kingsville, Ontario. Many thanks to Grant Munro for allowing us to record at his Woodbridge Farm Writers Retreat reading. Ann Mulhern holds a Master's of Education and a Bachelor of Arts from the University of Windsor. Mulhern wrote The Red Dress, her first book of narrative poetry, which focused on her experience living in a convent for 8 years in the 60s. Her next book, Touch the Dead, was shortlisted for the Acorn-Plantos Award in 2007. She has written countless poems and published 7 books to date. Ann Mulhern was selected as Windsor's Poet Laureate for the 2019-2022 term. Alix Hawley studies English literature and creative writing at Oxford University, the University of East Anglia, and the University of British Columbia. She published a story collection, The Old Familiar, which was longlisted for the Relit Award with Thistledown Press in 2008. Several of her stories have won accolades from the CBC, and in 2017, Witching won the CBC Short Story Prize. Her first novel, All True, Not a Lie in It, was published by Knopf Canada as its new Face of Fiction pick for 2015, and it was longlisted for the Scotiabank Giller Prize and won the Amazon.ca First Novel Award and the BC Book Prize for Fiction. And her second novel, My Name is a Knife, was longlisted for the Giller Prize. Both follow the story of larger-than-life frontiersman Daniel Boone. Grant Munro from the Woodbridge Writers series offers us some introductory remarks.
I'm going to get started with today's event. Thanks so much for turning out. This is our 4th annual event at the Woodbridge Farm Reading Series. I'm thrilled that everyone can attend again. For those of you, this is the first time coming here, what we do at the Woodbridge Farm is relatively simple. What we get a lot of really some of the best writers in Canada to come visit us here in Kingsville, Ontario. And every summer we try to have at least one reading series where we pair those writers with one of the many talented local writers in our area. And so today, what we're doing is no different. We have with us a very talented local poet, Ann Mulhern, who's here to read with the brilliant Alix Hawley, who's come to us from far, far away, from Kelowna, British Columbia. I don't like long introductions, and so I will jump right into it with my introduction to Ann Mulhern. Ann joins us from Windsor, where she has lived for many years. Interestingly, she began writing poetry later in life. She started in 2001 during a summer writing seminar, and in September of that same year, she won first prize in the Freedom Festival Poetry Contest. Now, we're also joined today by local publisher Marty Gervais, who is no dummy. He saw a talent, and he spoke to Ann and asked her if she would write a collection based on her 8 years as a nun in a convent during the 1960s. And she thankfully agreed. And what came from this was her first book of narrative poetry, The Red Dress, published in 2003. The book received national attention through an interview on the CBC radio program Tapestry, who I'm sure some of you are familiar with, many of with host Mary Hines. She subsequently published other books, including 2006's Touch of the Dead, about growing up in a cemetery house located at the edge of a cemetery in St. Thomas, Ontario, where her father was a grave digger and a caretaker. Next, she wrote When Angels Weep, a collection about the Father Charles Sylvester priest sexual abuse case that was successfully prosecuted at the Chatham Courthouse. Next, she wrote a sequel to her first collection, The Red Dress, titled Brides in Black. And just last year, she came out with her latest collection of poetry, All the Words Between, which was, like all of her books, published by the fine Black Moss Press. Mary Ann's poetry is always touching, typically personal, yet often playful, founded on a deeply felt and plain-spoken narrative style, and we're all thrilled to have her here to read to us today. Thank you.
I'm fortunate enough to live in a place where I overlook the water and I see the sunrise every morning. So this first poem is First Light. Crimson flame awakens the horizon, spreads over water, as if light, born from fire, struggles through deep channels of night into the fragile freedom of a river flowing between long, lonely borders of the first day and the last. And this is the poem that won that prize. It's a poem about fugitives. There were fugitives before and after the Civil War in the U.S., and there are fugitives now. So I consider this a very present-day poem. Freedom's Rail. When her people asked, who will lead us through forests where teeth and bullets tear flesh from bone, across a river pulling us into nets cast for bounty, Harriet Tubman answered, like Moses before me, I will find a path, lead you north on black winter nights, search for manna in the snow, bring you over on hidden lines running to Canada's sanctuary, where men are not linked with chains, where women wear rings on hands without ropes, where children play in cotton washed clean of blood, and the fields you plant yield harvests of promise, Africa's flower, opening. I'm writing a book on the tragic Donnelly family of Lucan, who February 4, 1880, were murdered in their own home by neighbors. Ghost of Bridget Donnelly. I am the ghost of Bridget Donnelly, released from flames, ashes of youth, never a summer bride veiled in white, a young mother nursing sons. I stay close to my family, land made sacred with blood. I'm really fascinated by the old Windsor Jail in Sandwich. I know that there must be 1,000 stories behind those concrete walls that have never been told. I've done some research, and I know that there is graffiti on the walls, on some of the walls, in the women's block. Graffiti in the women's block. Morning sneaks light through steel-grated windows, brightens concrete walls. Graffiti in the women's block. Butterflies, hummingbirds, red-winged blackbirds, swamp, robins, beautiful creatures, blessed with wings, spread over a prison where they fly, wild and high and free. And I'm going to finish with a poem that I want to relate this to Stephen King, because Stephen King often gives workshops. He wrote Carrie, and he wrote The Shining, and many other wonderful books in the horror genre. And when he gives workshops, people say to him, well, Stephen, where do you get your ideas for your writing? And he says, if you pay attention, the ideas come to you. And I have found that to be very true. One day I was on the elevator in my high-rise. There were two widows. I don't know them well, but I know they're widows. And one told a story about her husband's ashes, and then she got off the elevator. And then the other one told the story about her husband's ashes, and I was so astounded, I got off the elevator and wrote the poem. Ashes. A woman speaks of her husband, how she holds his ashes close, dances to their wedding song, kisses his photo every night, longs to join him in paradise. Another widow whispers, 3 days after her husband's death, she watched winter winds toss his ashes over the city dump. Garbage to garbage.
Thank you, Marianne. So now we've come to Alix Hawley. Alix was born in Vancouver, but moved shortly thereafter to Kelowna, British Columbia, where she's lived for most of her life. Her years away from home were spent pursuing a remarkable academic career. In 2008, she first published The Old Familiar, a collection of stories. The Globe and Mail's reaction to it was laudatory. Genius is a word I hesitate to use in a review, their critics said, but Hawley's work requires it. Next, in 2015, she published the novel that made her name in the world of Canadian literature, All True, Not a Lie in It. On its face, the book is a historical novel about American frontiersman Daniel Boone, but it's also a story about something deeper, which is the odd and very American way in which a simple man was formed into a mythic figure during his own time, to his own bafflement in many cases. It's that last facet that makes the book, and Alix's 2018 sequel to it, titled My Name is a Knife, so compelling and timely, especially when we think of America's ongoing propensity to make otherwise normal folks into larger-than-life celebrities. There's also in the book, in these two books, it touches on another topic which is very fascinating to me personally, which is this strange, nebulous divide between truth and fiction, which has become so timely in recent years. Given her novels' intelligence, mystery, and beautifully spare language, it's no surprise that they've attracted such great acclaim. All True, Not a Lie in It was named the Globe and Mail Best Book of the Year. It was a finalist for the Giller Prize. It won the Ethel Wilson Fiction Prize. And it won the Amazon.ca First Novel Award, which is Canada's biggest prize for a debut novel. My Name is a Knife, which takes a much deeper look into the life of Rebecca Boone, Daniel's estranged wife, was met with as high a critical reception. No less a figure than Joyce Carol Oates named Hawley as, quote, Cormac McCarthy's young heiress. It's for all these reasons and more that we're thrilled to have Alix here with us today.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, Grant, for that very nice introduction of my life in nerdhood. I promise I'm not that nerdy. The resume may make it sound that way. And thank you, Marianne, for your beautiful poems and for going first. It makes it easier for me. I'm so excited to be here in Kingsville. It's my first time in Southern Ontario. And I note that you are Canada's most southerly town. Is the sign not telling lies when you drive in? Right, so it's very exciting. My hair is very excited by the humidity, which is quite different from home in BC, where, as Grant noted, I have spent much of my life. And I want to thank Grant for inviting me to do a residency at the Woodbridge farm, where I'm working on 2 novels at the moment, and I have about 8 more days away from my children in which to do that. So I'm hitting it very hard. It's a beautiful house. I'm sure some of you know the farm and the old house, and if it's not haunted already, it will be by me. It's so great. And thanks to Martha, too, Grant's lovely partner, who took the time to pick me up in Windsor and take me grocery shopping and introduced me to mochi, the Japanese frozen dessert, which you should all try if you haven't before. They have it at the grocery store. So I'm going to read a little bit just a little section from each of the two novels. Grant has already given me a nice setup, so I'm sure many of you are of the generation who knows who Daniel Boone actually was. Yes, okay, because sometimes I do readings at universities with first-year students who just sort of look at me dumbfoundedly. It doesn't matter if you don't know who Daniel Boone was, it doesn't matter. I didn't know anything about him when I set out to write these books. My mom remembers the TV show from the 60s and occasionally sings the theme song, which I will not do, but feel free if you're in the mood. Something about a big man, I believe. Yeah, she sings that one. But I didn't set out to write a novel about this period of history or about this person. My academic nerd background was on Virginia Woolf, 19th century, English writing, children's writing, ladies in corsets, all that kind of thing. So when I finished my short story collection in 2008, I was pregnant with my first child. I remember lying on the floor of what was then my office and was about to become the baby's room, which is still, I still have no office at home, thanks to having another baby meanwhile. But I remember thinking, what am I going to write about next? And this image kind of floated into my overwrought pregnant mind, and it was of a man holding a body. And I knew I had seen it somewhere. It wasn't a photograph, it was a line drawing, a pen and ink illustration. And I couldn't figure out where it was from. I remember lying there thinking, what is this? Is this just some other weird pregnancy symptom where strange things happen in your mind? But I remember seeing it as a kid, and I thought I had seen it probably in a magazine. So I got on the phone to the librarians at Okanagan College where I was teaching then, and librarians being the excellent people they are, I spoke to one woman. I said, I'm looking for a picture. I think it's maybe about the frontier, maybe National Geographic, maybe from the 80s, I don't know. And within 20 minutes she had phoned me back with the December 1985 issue of National Geographic, the one that had Titanic on the cover. You might remember that one. So that's where this picture was from. You go past the Titanic article, there's an article on Daniel Boone. And I remember looking at this in my grade 5 classroom. I was 10 at the time, so you can calculate my age perfectly now. And I remember staring at that drawing and reading the article, but it was the drawing that had come back to me. My agent thinks it's because, I was anxious about having a baby, and that's where this hook came back to me from, because it turned out the illustration was of the man, Daniel Boone, American frontiersman, holding the body of his son. And that ended up being what pulled me into writing this story. I wrote it wrong several times. I had the wrong voice. I had a frame story about an academic researcher looking into the life of Daniel Boone, which my agent told me she hated in those words. And she said the part that comes alive is when you're actually writing about the history, the people in that time. Go write that book. And so I'd had another baby meanwhile, and believed I could do it in about 2 weeks, and of course it took me 2 more years to rewrite this draft. I tried it in the third person, which is the he voice, so Daniel did this, Daniel did that, and it started to feel like a kind of a not very well written young adult biography. It felt clunky and clumsy, and even I could tell, and if you're a writer, if you can tell it's dragging, then it's not a good sign. But I finished that draft just for the sake of the plot, and then I dug into writing first person, which I don't like writing. I still don't. And this book ended up being first person, the I voice. So I'm in Daniel Boone's mind. I do this, I do that in this book. It was scary because this was an actual person who lived, to be audacious and cheeky enough to take on his voice as a historical, well-known figure with a TV show of his own and comic books and everything else that's been going on since he was even alive, and male voice and all those kinds of things. But it ended up being the only way it could be done. So I want to read you a little bit from All True and Not a Lie in It, which is full of lies, by the way. And if you like, later we can talk about how historical fiction works. But essentially, I had the frame of the events that I wanted to keep, and my job was to fill in the holes where nobody really knew what happened or what someone's personality was like. I thought I would read a sexy part, slightly sexy part, when Dan first meets Rebecca, his future wife, and they end up having multiple children together and all kinds of adventure and terror and awful things happen. As I mentioned, the center of this book is the murder of their son, James. But I wanted to go back to earlier in the narrative when Dan and Rebecca first meet. So Dan is about 17 or 18 at this point. He's just come back from his first trip to an ill-fated war, and there's lots of ill-fated things that go on historically for him. But he's seen Rebecca once before at a party, and now he sees her again in an orchard when he's hanging out with his friends. Okay. Here two girls sit, the shadows making a net over them. They are sharing black cherries from their basket and looking straight at me. One is the face, the girl from Brian's Frolic, Rebecca. They are very still as they sit eating. Rebecca moves her hands slowly to the basket, and I see what an effort there is in her stillness. She is full of trapped life. Her heart beats and beats beneath her clothing. She will keep me alive. She is another chance. My own flat heart swells and struggles in its pit. I watch for a time, hardly breathing, then I force my legs to move. I walk over and sit directly beside her. Her mouth is full of dark fruit. She does not trouble herself to try to speak. I watch her jaw move and the stain spreading out onto her untroubled lip. She slips 2 more cherries in. The other girl stares at me with her big deer eyes. She is the sister who came out of the barn at the party. I say, "How do?" The sister blinks and says, "How do you do?" She has a stopped-up way of talking with her hand hovering about her chin. She also has black hair and eyes, but a paler, thinner face. I say, "You are sisters." She twitches herself about. I smirk at my stupid pronouncement. Rebecca plucks more cherries from the basket. The sister ventures a remark about the heat and peeps at me a while longer. Then she gets up and wanders over to where Nettie and Squire have sat in the sun with several of the girls minding children. I remain where I am. I take out my knife. Rebecca has another cherry. A bee from the hives across the orchard drops onto her wrist. I flip the knife over my knuckles and in and out between my fingers. She pays no heed. Her eyes stay on the bee as it crawls toward the fruit. She turns her wrist and does not flick the insect away. It gets to the cherry. Its fat lower body quivers as it sucks. She stretches her fingers lightly. She appears to be contemplating one of the world's marvels, that is to say, her own hand. Now, she closes her fist round the bee. I see her do it. Its buzz goes on, though dampened. I say, "You witch! What evil do you have in mind for that innocent creature? Has it ever done you any harm?" She goes on holding it. It does not sting her, or does not appear to. Her face shows no pain at any rate. It shows nothing. I throw the knife. It is a gentle throw. Catches the edge of her white apron and pierces the lace. For half a moment she stops chewing. Aha. I say, "Nice afternoon." She says nothing. I go on. "Nice apron." I take up the knife and flip it again, and then throw it once more with a touch more force, so it goes straight through the fabric of her apron and pins it to the ground. If she tries to get up, the apron will rip to shreds. It is a flimsy, fine thing, not homespun. It is expensive. She keeps up her stillness and silence. The bee drones on in her fist. If it is stinging her, she shows no sign of it. I toss the knife again and again. I make restless holes all along the cloth, closer and closer to her thigh. All the time she does not move. It seems to me she wants to laugh. She eats more cherries, and I watch her chewing and daintily removing the pits into her other marvelous hand. I say, "Ashamed to get cherry juice on it." Now she opens her lips as if to speak, but she only pops in another black cherry from the basket. She spits the pit far off towards the forest. The knife is still embedded at an angle. I nod in the direction the pit flew and I say, well, now there'll be another tree. Perhaps a little far from the orchard, though. You can call that your own when it grows up. Pick all the fruit for yourself. A pit bounces against my skull. Juice travels down my temple. She looks up at the sky as if it were nothing but rain beginning. She opens her fist at last, and the bee sits in her palm, swaying its head before it flies off crooked. She goes back to her cherries. I say, you shot me. You shot me. I feign injury, I feign death on the grass, and I hear her voice for the first time. It is low, a little rough. She's still looking away when she says, do excuse me. I could hardly help where the stone wished to travel to. I say, begging your pardon also, I could hardly help where my knife wished to go. I see her do it. She pulls up her skirts so her stockings show. They're faintly streaked with grass. Her ankles are narrow. She wants me to see. Now she covers them again and smooths the apron as though there is nothing at all wrong with it. As though she cut it full of holes herself and dotted it with juice and stuck a knife through it for an ornament. She flicks her black eyes at me, and they eat me whole. I always say I was so bold because I was trying her temper. She might shoot me yet if I'm to see her again in this world. And I want to read a little bit from the follow-up, which you don't have to have read all through to read this one, but it probably helps. This is partly in Rebecca's voice this time, so I had to come up with another first-person voice, and I thought this one will be easy. It's a woman's voice, it's a mother, it'll be so simple compared to coming up with Dan's voice, and it wasn't. It took a very long time. I'm in a writer's group with a couple of other BC novelists, and every time I sent them a piece in Rebecca's voice while I was working on it, they'd say, still sounds just like Dan, maybe Dan in a dress, but still sounds exactly like Dan. So it took quite a while to shape a totally separate voice for Rebecca, and we don't know a lot about her historically, as is so common with especially women figures from the past. We know she was a skilled midwife. She had 10 children of her own and adopted, I think, at least 10 more from various family members who were killed fighting or otherwise living in the backwoods. So super mom here, Rebecca. I feel pretty weak with just the two who nearly grind me to pieces every day. But we know she mentioned in sort of a letter through someone else, we know she said she was afraid all the time when Dan was gone. Anyway, this is later, they're older. Dan's been gone again for a while, and Rebecca's deciding finally what to do here. Just a few names, Jemima and I think there's another Rebecca, Levina. These are some of their kids' names, they're adult kids, and they have their own children by now. So here's Rebecca. It is winter, too late to go. I cannot leave him lost this time, coming back here to find us gone. When I try for a few hours' sleep, I see his gray hair in the snow. It troubles me all day. He comes back in a great blizzard. We do not see him until he is upon us, stumbling outside the door of the cabin Will built for his family. He does not call out. The horse is walking, head down, without direction. He is huddled on its back, wrapped in a hide against the blowing. Jemima is the first to reach him, crying, "Daddy is back! Daddy is back! Come down and get inside, Daddy!" Will and Isaac go out with the lights, calling and reaching for the reins, but he does not speak to them. He does not move as they walk the horse to us. Is he frozen? Is he breathing? Over the wind, I call, "Daniel, you're home. Come in and get warm now. Fetch him some rum, Jemima." She does not listen. She pulls at him, whatever she can reach through the frozen hide. "Daddy!" Now he turns his head. His beard is white with ice, his nose and cheeks chapped purple. Joseph Scholl behind me says, "Can I help you down, sir?" At this Daniel speaks. "Well, all right, but take care." His voice is thin. He turns his body stiffly and holds out one arm. which shifts the hide. A child, curled sideways into a ball on the saddle before him, wrapped in a bearskin. Wide eyes, shining face, a wet-looking head. Daniel says, "Keep her warm." Daniel. He blinks quickly at me as though his eyelids are freezing shut. He says, "Get her inside." I reach for his arm. "Take her, Joseph. Jemima, did I not tell you to get some rum?" Joseph takes the girl into his arms. Jemima pulls again at Daniel, and he shifts himself to dismount, but can hardly swing his hip to do it. She helps him to stand and calls for Flanders and everybody else. "Here's Daddy!" They press into the cabin where Lavanna is piling more wood on the fire, and Easter is gently pulling the heavy bearskin from around the little girl, who sits staring at everyone, her skin gleaming. Jemima pushes Daniel down onto a stool. His backside strikes it hard, and he winces. He sits breathing roughly and waves off questions. "Enough fuss." I fetch a blanket for the child, though she's not shaking. She scratches her head and looks alertly at me when I put it over her shoulders. Her hair is a dark snarl at the ends. Daniel says, "She's quite warm. I greased her up well before we set out." "Where did you find her?" "At a camp with a few Shawnee hunters sitting on that very bearskin, happy as could be. Traded some meat and a bottle for her. I made the better bargain, would you not say?" He winks at the girl, who gives him a hesitant grin. Her grown-up teeth are halfway in. Her eyes are a light brown. "Where's her family?" "She does not know." "No matter." "Is she?" But he warns me off with a look and raises his palms to the fire. Then he bends to take her on his knee. He balances her and says, "She is mine now. Ours. How do, miss?" Lavanna gives the girl a cup and says softly, "What is your name?" The girl tucks her head into her shoulders. Daniel laughs and says, "She looks like Ann Eliza to me. What do you say, missy? Pretty name?" She does not answer. She does not say much when Daniel insists on carrying her back to our shelter, only frowning when I wipe the grease from her face and neck and put her into one of the children's shirts to sleep. I ask him now if she is a Shawnee, but he shakes his head as if I'm a moth and goes straight to sleep. The girl shuffles for a while, her fingernails scratching at the sheets before she is asleep also. Eliza, that child he said he knew and lost. In the morning, Daniel's happier than he has been in years. One of our Susie's small daughters cries out of rage and jealousy when he trots this new girl about on his back in the snow as if he were a young man, as if this were his only child. Even the bigger girls cry a little. In the spring, we hear of a family missing her up the Ohio. She was taken in an attack on a farm. Her mother killed when she was putting out the sheets to dry. Her true name is Chloe. She smiles when I say it to her. That is your name, I tell her, squeezing her hand so she will not forget it again. He will not take her back himself. He sends her home on a flatboat passing. He will not watch it go. Only now does he say we are going. Get me away from here. He takes a torch and limps over to the small cabin he has nearly finished all on his own. He sets fire to it. And thank you so much for that.
Thanks for joining us. Look for more episodes of All Right in Sin City wherever you listen to podcasts, or check out our website, allrightinsincity.com. For information and announcements of new podcasts, sign up to our email list or follow us on Facebook and Twitter.